Social justice work can bring much joy into the lives of others and into our own lives. As Unitarian Universalists who try to walk our social justice talk, it is important that we stay alert and keep ourselves and our lives balanced and healthy. Passion can become obsession, need, but lack of purpose in the larger world can create self-absorption. People and churches need a healthy balance to stay happy and effective in both spheres. I've spent some time exploring the life of Clara Barton, Civil War era Universalist, and an amazing, amazing social justice worker. I would like to share her life and some thoughts on this month's worship theme for the holiday season, the interplay between despair and hope as it played out in her life. I will also talk about our own OCUUC social justice work and our current projects. Clara Barton, one of our Universalist foreparents, was an adept dancer with despair. Take a moment and picture the Clara Barton who appears when you hear her name. There she is. If your picture was like mine, she was a hazy figure who we know started the Red Cross, a benevolent, kindly woman from the 19th century, beaming out at us from black and white photos. Photos of her show a cute woman with a round face who radiates goodwill. But I would like to add some overlay and depth to this woman who is just now beginning to be appreciated by historians and the general public. Determined does not even begin to describe her. Barton's character was very complex and her life has been underdocumented. Shaped by her upbringing, her character, and her personal demons, her dynamic participation in the Civil War changed America. Biographers have a field day with Clara Barton. Historian Elizabeth Pryor describes her as a person who was propelled by a merciless driving force, a shattering insecurity, and a demanding and erratic ego. Biographer David Henry Burton is very hard on her. He admits that she was heroic and generous, but that she was unable to handle any criticism and needed continual shows of gratitude. He also describes her as an egotistical and self-centered person who needed honor and praise to carry out her good works. Now, on the flip side, now we'll end with the upbeat one, right? Historian Stephen Oates is obviously enamored and charmed by her. He portrays her as a scrappy, tenacious Civil War heroine who transformed herself, American womanhood, and the world in his book, A Woman of Valor. After reading up on her, I can see in all the biographers' descriptions a piece of her. I can see how they drew those conclusions about her. And I don't think they are mutually exclusive. I think she really was all those things. She can be a Rorschach test, challenging a researcher to get a clear look at her. Barton was born on Christmas Day in 1821, the youngest of 5 children. Her siblings were much, much older. Her family were staunch Universalists. The Bartons helped to found their church, the first Universalist church of North Oxford, Massachusetts. There was some doubt about Clara's religious leanings as an adult, but she reaffirmed her Universalist faith in a strong statement toward the end of her life. Universalists, as you may recall, believe in universal salvation, heaven for all. Everyone will be saved. A benevolent God will not turn any soul away. Like many of the female champions of that era, she did not marry, so she could have an independent life. None of the men she met were strong marriage material in her eyes. No one was quite good enough to marry. Her mother was a very, very severe person, and Clara learned to run a household. She was not allowed to play with dolls or toys. Clara adored her soldier father, who told her many stories of his campaign days. Her beloved brother David taught her to ride a horse and shoot a gun. She stood 5 feet tall as an adult, and with her brother's tutelage was an expert rider and shot. Mental illness seemed to run in the family. Her sister Sally had some kind of a breakdown and was restricted to one of the bedrooms in the Barton house for a time. Historian Elizabeth Brown Pryor states that Clara not only suffered a great deal from depression during her life, but was driven in her work by her depression and fear of insanity. Pryor argues that her mental disorders were born out of her need to excel and a belief she'd never done enough in the world. Barton exhibited some unusual behaviors early on, particularly excessive shyness as a child. She had to be retrieved home from boarding school when she stopped eating. The medical processes for healing mind and body in those days could be pretty scary. Options for healing by doctors were limited for most folks in the 19th century in Europe and the United States. Those who suffered from depression or other mental or physical ailments, up until the middle of the century, usually had their bodily fluids, or humors as they called them, balanced by being bled from the arm into a little bowl, or the use of a large number of leeches to draw the blood. The worse off you were, the more they bled you. To the credit of some observant 19th century healers and doctors, after years of the medical establishment using this treatment, but before germ theory was commonly known and the cleaning of instruments was implemented, they began to see that the bleeding the patient didn't work out so well. Clara Barton's family was lucky because they did suffer from all these ailments, but they were forward thinkers in this area. When they saw that their daughter, as a little girl, was crippled by her shyness, unable to attend school away from home, they called in a phrenologist. Phrenologists cured their patients by examining the shape of the patient's head and then interpreting the information and prescribing treatment for their physical and mental health. Just the fact the doctor left the patient's blood inside his or her body and didn't cut them open with an unsanitary knife probably went a long way to make the person feel better and heal faster. Homeopathy was also being explored at this time as a healing alternative. Clara's older brother, who fell and was critically injured during a barn raising, was bled regularly for the 2 years of his convalescence. When the family changed doctors, the new doctors simply stopped the harmful medications and used steam bath treatment, and he recovered within a few weeks. Contemporary Louisa May Alcott's health was permanently damaged when she was prescribed mercurious chloride, a mercury compound, for typhoid pneumonia she picked up during her Civil War nursing stint. The poisonous cure caused her severe health problems for the rest of her life. Nursing her brother was an extremely important event in Clara's life. She stayed by his bed for 2 years as a preteen. She applied and removed the leeches and was responsible for all of David's medications. It prepared her for her Civil War battlefield nursing career. She was 10 years old. The phrenologist that the Bartons consulted for Clara's condition told them that she was a person who would never be able to speak up for herself, but would be fearless if she were helping others. He suggested that they have her teach school when she was old enough. All this was discussed within earshot of 15-year-old Clara. This phrenologist seemed to know something about the human psyche, and he gave Clara and her family direction for her talents. Perhaps reading the shape of the skull was a front for a perceptive doctor to step in and provide emotional healing to patients before the days of psychotherapy. So teach school she did at the ripe old age of 17, as soon as she could pass the test. She was not allowed. Was not allowed to play with those dolls and toys, but she was taught how to run a household and do everything with maximum efficiency. This was a very efficient family. After 13 years of teaching, she organized a free public school in New Jersey, convincing the school board and the community she could make it successful. The school became a huge success. She started with 6 pupils, and when the school blossomed quickly to an enrollment of 600 pupils under her direction. At that point, the school board passed her over and hired a man to be the principal. She quit flat out soon after, and the guy who they hired to be the principal was very young and was constantly giving her the business. You know? So she quit. Soon after, she went to work in the United States Patent Office in Washington, D.C. She had a sister there, and became the first female clerk, demanding and receiving a salary equal to the male clerks. She also was subjected to what we would consider severe sexual harassment from her co-workers, which she withstood. But when the Buchanan administration came into office, she was let go from her full-time job. They were political considerations with the administration for a lot of those jobs in those days. Her personal depression struck again, but she bounced back when she was recalled as a patent clerk under the new Lincoln administration. Barton would go through these extreme periods of activity and then deep depressions during setbacks. Her high points occurred when she truly threw herself, mind, body, and spirit, into her work. First as a school teacher, then as the first woman patent clerk, then for the injured during the Civil War, and on to her Red Cross organizing. Her low points came when she was disrespected in some way by the powers that be, school boards, the military, the government, or other organizers. When she felt demeaned and treated with less than full respect, she folded down into deep depression. At one point in her life, she spoke of suicide. But when there was a project she could throw herself into for others, she was a human dynamo. She was a very, very savvy, and her street smarts improved over time. When she returned to Washington to resume her patent office job, she started calling on all the important politicians in the area and made new friends. She was schmoozing to ensure she could keep her job in the patent office. No woman of good character in the mid-1800s would call on a man alone, so she always arranged for a male escort to these meetings with politicians, usually her nephew. She also started sitting in on the debates in the Senate and House of Representatives. When the Civil War broke out the next year, in 1861, she was right there in Washington. She saw firsthand how the government worked, and she had political friends in high places. Barton started her wartime career by simply asking at the Washington, D.C. infirmary if she could help nurse the incoming wounded after the attack on Fort Sumter in South Carolina in 1861. She was appalled when she found out so many men died because they were not cared for immediately after the battles. She was told that women were not allowed at the front, they would just get in the way. Raised to be a warrior in spirit by her soldier father, able to shoot and ride as well as most men, she went ballistic. The Union government did not have a chance. The Union government created the U.S. Sanitary Commission at the outbreak of the Civil War, a body that was overwhelmed by the wounded who were streaming off the battlefields. Barton was able to step in and work alone as a relief organizer and nurse. There was such a huge need for supplies and medical care. She used her own funds, badgered all her friends and relations, took a leave of absence from the patent office, and fought her way against sexism and prejudice up to the front to help the wounded. Many of the soldiers she nursed in early days were from Massachusetts, and some of them were her former students from her school teaching days. By fighting for permission to be at the battlefront, she could give the wounded water, a drink of water, hello, and basic first aid immediately after they were injured, rather than having them wait days before they were cared for by anyone or transported off the fields. Dorothea Dix, one of our Unitarian ancestors, was appointed superintendent of United States Army nurses for the U.S. Sanitary Commission. Clara Barton insisted on working alone or being in charge. She was definitely not a team player. She would not have been a good candidate for joining Dorothea Dix's nursing group. Dix, a severe personality, was accused of being dictatorial, and her nickname with the nurses was Dragon Dix. Sorry, you guys, I like to give a full picture. Dix put out a press release that stated volunteer nurses must be over 30, plain looking. Their dresses must be brown or black, no hoop skirts, no bows or curls in your hair, or jewelry could be worn. Clara Barton never applied to be a Dix nurse. Barton did fight every step of the way for each of the justice projects she became involved in. She threw herself physically, mentally, and emotionally into each phase of her work. She would use up her physical strength and her financial resources and the resources of her friends to get what was needed, and then when she was not able to persevere further, a crippling depression would strike and she would drop briefly out of the fray. Self-care is a contemporary term and was not in the 19th century vocabulary, even in spirit. Martyring oneself for family or a cause was considered admirable. So those who used excessive work for their own self-care to alleviate the personal suffering or to work out their own issues had some nice opportunities for burnout, as we still do today. I do see Clara Barton as one of our UU ancestors who was a warrior. She was fighting throughout her life on many fronts. Peacemakers, as many of us UUs are, can be uncomfortable with that. What would we do, however, if a true military war broke out in our town? Would we fight to defend our families? Our Unitarian Universalist Association's Ministry Director, Kimberly Paquette, in this month's UU World, our denominational magazine, speaks of her membership at a UU church during her tour of Army duty as life-saving. She urges UUs to open their hearts to military personnel and change the culture of the military from within. We might not all agree with her, but it certainly resonated as food for thought as I was working on this presentation. Clara kept a journal for most of her life. These volumes have presented a multifaceted woman. She unashamedly had an affair with a married officer during the Civil War, and he continued to write her passionate letters after the war ended. As she aged, she would meet with a defeat of one of her causes, be diagnosed by doctors, and be ordered to bed for months or even years. Every time this occurred, a new project would sometime appear, and sometimes within days, poof, she would pop back up. If we jump to the end of her life at age 90 in review, she had spearheaded the acceptance of female nurses during war time on the battlefield, traveled and been a part of the International Red Cross, where she was very famous over in Europe because of her Civil War activities, begun a comprehensive data listing for missing soldiers after the war, and founded the American Red Cross at a time of radical isolationism from other countries in American politics. Not bad for one lifetime. She foresaw the importance of the Red Cross in natural disasters, not simply during military operations. She saw the first nursing schools spring up in the country. Barton's periods of despair can be tied to self-perceived failures or being thwarted by authority figures, excessive sensitivity, or a huge ego, depending on your point of view. She was what we would call a workaholic. She took a brief break during the war for her love affair, but she was restless and felt the need to get back to the injured. She couldn't relax and just enjoy herself. I've often asked myself, as I read biographies of 19th century social justice workers, would they have been as productive if they had been physically well and practiced self-care? If they had antidepressants and all the modern medicines that we have today for mood disorders? Clara Barton's life brings this question to my mind again. A contemporary pagan teacher and justice worker, T. Thorne Coyle, explains that she became interested in deeper spiritual work when she saw that many of the social justice workers she was working with had anger issues and were very unhappy people. I like to think our foreparents would have been able to work for justice and have had more balanced lives, and perhaps more personal happiness if they lived in today's world. Birth control methods, sanitation, and modern medical practices are things we can easily take for granted. As the heirs of our justice-loving UU ancestors, social justice work is part of the lifeblood of our churches. One of the main reasons I joined OCUUC 25 years ago was that I love the way that community and friendship blended with social justice work. I would encourage everyone to become involved with our social justice efforts, even in a small way. Religious Education for Children and Youth has adopted a social justice program for this year that extends to the entire congregation. We are creating sock kits regularly for Share Ourselves. We are also asking everyone to donate 1 can of food per month. Not per week, not every day, just 1 can of food per month. And you can place it in that green SOS cart that is outside every week. Our goal is to fill the cart with non-perishable food items. Pet food is also needed. Described in their words, Share Ourselves is a nationally recognized health center providing high-quality, comprehensive safety net services to the Orange County community. And we have had a long partnership with SOS. Now that OCUUC's new kitchen is complete, we will resume our 18 ministry cooking sessions, providing meals for those who suffer from catastrophic illnesses. Look for sign-ups to participate in once-a-month cooking sessions. No experience is necessary. You do not need to be a gourmet chef. Our next nook is dedicated to one of our dear volunteers who passed away from AIDS. If you are a singer, we have a newly formed caring choir, and we offer Beth, our Director of Music Ministries, and the choir offer healing through song. So you can see Beth if you'd like to join, or let her know if you need someone to come and sing for you or someone in your family. This holiday season, we will be helping out the Children's Hospital of Orange County with a special project. And there will be more information today out on the patio about that CHOP project. OCUUC supports our own lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community by celebrating and educating. We offer love and support to everyone in our church family. Also, OCUUC also supports our larger community. Our Interfaith Helping Hands Day was last week. Today is International AIDS Awareness Day. The Pediatric AIDS Foundation is asking everyone to participate in their Thunderclap campaign. If you can take a moment and create a post on your Facebook page or if you have a Twitter account. It is one action that costs nothing but a little time. They tell us that every day more than 700 babies are born HIV positive. Without treatment, more than 80% of these children will die by their 5th birthday. Look for flyers, read the OCUUC website and blast, and the Reese Weekly for information on OCUUC and our community programs and how you can participate. I don't want to overwhelm anyone. We all need to take care of ourselves. It's so important. And as human beings, it's easy to feel emotionally overwhelmed and start to shut down and retreat back into our personal lives if we feel like it's too much, I can't do it. In our era, we are barraged with information and requests each day. I don't know how many emails you guys get, but I get so many emails of advertising and my lefty causes. So I would encourage you to just pick one small thing if your life is super busy or you have limited funds. Maybe purchase 1 can of soup at the store per month for the SOS collection. Pick up 1 unopened container of shampoo and conditioner from your hotel for our sock kits if you are traveling. One of the things I loved when I first joined OCUUC as a mother of 2 young children and I was heading back into the workforce was that I could help others and not have to recreate the social justice wheel. I brought one of our RE sock kits to show you. Imagine that you haven't had a shower or been able to brush your teeth for several days. It's raining out and your feet and shoes are soaked. Then you meet Melody Daigle, our SOS liaison, and she hands you this gift: dry socks, soap, a toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, a comb and a razor, Blessing of Blessings deodorant. Receiving this kit will change your day. To be a part of the caring chain of people who created this gift, our members, our children, our SOS volunteers, will change your life.